Hi everyone and welcome to this week's episode of the Swyftx Squawk. I'm Pav, lead market analyst here at Swyftx. This week we're going to dive into some topics that we talked about last week. We really spoke about how some of the geopolitical issues that were surfacing may impact what we were going to see in the inflation print this week. And lo and behold, we really didn't see any issues. If anything, we saw exactly what we wanted to see, and that's inflation coming down. Now, this is obviously from the perspective that what would potentially drive tailwinds for something like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, XRP. It's starting to see a lot of these headline metrics that influence monetary policy come back into line, right? We've all heard about inflation being elevated since 2022. Now we're starting to see that really start to come back and correct. And if you want a bit of a deeper dive into this, I would recommend checking out last week's edition of the Squawk, where we talked about how inflation, it is basically a buildup of a couple of key metrics. But one of the big ones is oil and energy, right? And what we had seen was oil and energy prices rally about almost 20% since the start of July, as we did see some of these tensions abroad flare up. Like, we're not political experts here at all by any means, but we're still seeing, even in the most recent 24 hours, still issues around this conflict start to sustain at least the flare up. So I still think the biggest issue that I see for the markets and what I cover in this week's edition of the Squawk is, while we're seeing a bit of a relief right now from the markets, from this improved core inflation print and even just a headline inflation print, the thing that policymakers care about, it's trend more so than a single print, right? So this is the first print that we've seen in a while, just to show this year-on-year figure, where we've seen inflation fall back down again since the start of this year. And you can't ignore the facts, like we have been slowly tracking down since 2023. But again, as we're heading into the back end of this year, this going sideways may not be enough for policymakers to really make any shift in their way of thinking, right? That's at least one way to think about it. There's a couple of other different schools of thought. But essentially, inflation coming down and continuing to go down, that's the scenarios that we want to watch happen from here. And again, this is a step in the right direction. But next month, the month after that, the month after that, as we head into Q4 at the end of this year, this is what we want to pay attention to in terms of the month-on-month figure. Are we seeing that trend continue? As this was a very steep outlier to the downside. I'm not going to draw any similarities to this period here in the market because that was completely different conditions. But what you need to know is much lower than what the market expected. And we did see that relief. But then when we compare how the market's responding now, even with this data print in market, yes, it was positive, but we're still yet to see the market start to pay any higher prices for Bitcoin than what we saw in June, even with this bit of new information that the market's obviously been waiting for. One of the key themes is interest rate drops and easing monetary conditions, like we spoke about a few minutes ago. Need inflation to come down to do that. While we have seen this first print come in, it does seem like we are seeing some selling activity at these prior highs. And when we talk about markets, we talk about trends and either the market being in a holding pattern. If we were going to see a higher trend start to form here, well, we'd want to see firstly a higher high form, right? And we're still waiting to see over the coming days and weeks if that's going to happen as we head into August. Or is this simply just a retest of a previous high, which is here? And we're going to see a next thing. Maybe this is going to be just another shoulder, like a lower high, and we see the market mark down lower again and make a new low for the year. But I hope that helps fill in the gaps and connect some dots for everyone today on what we saw this week out of the US. This is definitely a step in the right direction, but I just caution that we may be pretty early in the innings. It'd be more interesting to see if we continue to see this lowered inflation be a trend rather than just a one-off print. So I hope that's been helpful. Thank you.